صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد۔ یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، تمہارا دوست ہے تنہا، تمہارا دوست ہے تنہا، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، شہید کیسے ہوا وہ بتاؤ گے آقا، تمہارے مسلم پہ کس سناؤ گے آقا، رقیہ تک کہتی ہے رستا، رقیہ تک کہتی ہے رستا، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، لگاؤ ایسے بھی انداز میری غربت کے، جہاں پہ یہ بے علی لکھنا تھا وہاں میں نے دیا ہے ماں کا حوالہ، دیا ہے ماں کا حوالہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، بتا رہا تھا اسے کوئی بھی نہیں ہے میرا، تو بولی ثانی ذرا حبیب آئے گا، ہے اس کو تم پہ بھروسہ، ہے اس کو تم پہ بھروسہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، وہ جب یہ سنتی ہے کوفے سے آ رہے ہیں شکی، تو پوچھتی ہے ہمارا بھی آئے گا کوئی، دعائیں دے گی سکینہ، دعائیں دے گی سکینہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، گوارا کر نہیں سکتی حسین کی غیرت، تمہاری زوجہ کی چادر لوٹنے مت، تم اس کو چھوڑ کے کوفہ، تم اس کو چھوڑ کے کوفہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ ختم شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، مجھے ہے یاد وہ لمحہ جو رب کی مرضی سے تم ہو کے زندہ میری باتیں سننے آئے تھے، بولا رہا ہوں دوبارہ، بولا رہا ہوں دوبارہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، در بطول دوبارہ جلایا جائے گا، تمہارے دوست پہ خنجر چلایا جائے گا، نہیں ہے وقت زیادہ، نہیں ہے وقت زیادہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، چمکتے چاند کی ہم کو بھی دید ہو جائے، تم آؤ تو میرے بچوں میں عید ہو جائے، بہت ادا سے ہے کنبہ، بہت ادا سے ہے کنبہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط نہیں سے بہنوں کی آرزو سمجھو، ہمارے لفظوں کو زینب کی گفتگو سمجھو، بہن یہ کہتی ہے بھیا، بہن یہ کہتی ہے بھیا، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، بہن نے اسے کو تکلم میں جو بہی سمجھا تھا، پکار شاہ میں غریباں میں ثانیے زہرا، ہمارا لٹتا ہے پردہ، ہمارا لٹتا ہے پردہ، حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ۔
بارے دیگر صلوات۔ اترے گلے حدیقائے امام حسین ہے، اترے گلے حدیقائے امام حسین ہے، تازہ ہو جس سے روح وہ ریحاں حسین ہے، زانو نبی کا رحل ہے تو قرآن حسین ہے، پیاسا ہوا شہید جو وہ مہماں حسین ہے، اور صحرائے کربلا میں ہوا کیا بری چلی، صحرائے کربلا میں ہوا کیا بری چلی، فاقہ تھا تیسرا کے گلے پر چھری چلی، اترے گلے حدیقۂ صلوات فاتحہ۔ کوفے کا وطن سے جب قصد کیا شاہ نے، کوفے کا وطن سے گل تھا کہ رواں بادے، بہاری ہے چمن سے رو کر کہا یہ بانوں نے، تب شاہ زمن سے ایک کاش نکل جاتی میری روح بدن سے، ایک کاش نکل جاتی میری روح بدن سے، بیماری میں منہ بیٹی سے موڑا نہیں جاتا، اس حال سے صغرا کو چھوڑا نہیں جا، اور اس حال سے صغرا کو چھوڑا نہیں جا، سن کر یہ صدا شاہ کے آنسو نکل آئے، اور بیمار کے نزدیک گئے سر کو جھکائے، منہ پھیر کے بیٹی کو سخن لب پہ یہ لائے، اور کیا زرگ و نکاحت ہے خدا اس کو بچا، اور کیا زرگ و نکاحت ہے خدا اس کو بچا، جس صاحب آزار کا یہ حال ہو گھر میں، دانستہ میں کیوں کر اسے لے جاؤں سفر میں، دانستہ میں کیوں کر اسے لے جاؤں سفر، اور کہہ کر یہ سخن بیٹھ گئے سید خوشگو، اور سورہ الحمد پڑھا تھام کے بعد، اور سورہ الحمد پڑھا تھام کے بعد، رے بیمار نے پائی گلے زہرا کی جو خوشبو، آنکھوں کو تو کھولا پر ٹپکنے لگے آنسو، ماں سے کہا مجھ میں جو حواس آئے ہیں ماں، کیا میرے مسیحا میرے پاس آئے ہیں کیا میرے مسیحا میرے پاس آئے ہیں، رے بانوں نے کہا ہاں وہی آئے ہیں میری جان، جو کہنا ہے کہہ لو کہ یہاں اور ہے سامان، دیکھو تو ادھر روتے ہیں بی بی شہزیشا، سغرا نے کہا ان کی محبت پہ میں قربان، وہ کون سا ساما ہے جو یوں روتے ہیں بابا، کھل کر کہو مجھ سے کہ جدا ہوتے ہیں بابا، اور کھل کر کہو مجھ سے کہ جدا ہوتے ہیں بابا۔
السلام علیکم۔ Let's begin with the recitation of Allah Salawat. Before we begin, I would like to request especially the youth to please come up close to the member because we're going to have a lot of brothers come in near the end, so they should have space. So all the youth, please recite a loud salawat for them as they move up. Just a quick reminder, tomorrow Sheikh Abbas Panju will be holding one-time only Q&A tomorrow at 7 p.m. It will be in the Legacy Hall, both for the youth, for boys and girls, 7 p.m. to 8:15, and then right after that, there will be Namaz al-Maghrib. We sent out a Google form on the WhatsApp group. It's also on all our social media posts. So if you can please submit your questions beforehand, and inshallah, we will have the Q&A session tomorrow. Another quick reminder, there's also a youth workshop for kids the age of 4 to 7 downstairs, which is starting tonight till 7th Muharram. Please go down there if you're of that age group. There's also a request for everyone to please cooperate with the parking team. As we know, we have very hardworking volunteers out there. We're trying to make sure that the parking goes smoothly, so please cooperate with them. A lot of people have been asking about the English Majalis, where to find it on YouTube. So just a quick reminder, there is a separate page for the IEC English on YouTube. So there's a separate channel for IEC English Majalis. That's where you can find it, both the live streaming and it will be uploaded afterwards. Just to prepare everyone, as we all know, we will have our annual fundraiser on 8 Muharram. So please be ready. We have a lot to achieve, but if you want to donate beforehand, there's a table in the back, so please take that opportunity to visit. Last thing is, a lot of people have been asking what the topic of Sheikh Abbas Panju's Majalis is, and every night there will be a very interesting topic that will be discussed. So I just wanted to take the opportunity so we're prepared for tomorrow. So today the topic will be the truth behind the betrayal of Hazrat Muslim bin Akhil. And then tomorrow night the topic of his Majalis will be the grandeur of Karbala. And with this, I'd like to request Sheikh Abbas Panju to bless us with the recitation of Majalis of Imam Hussain. And please recite a loud salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا غريب الغرباء يا مظلوم كربلاء السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته. السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته. السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا وكنا معكم سادتي. يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال مولانا إمام حسن بن علي المجتبى صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: لا يوم كيومك يا أبا عبد الله. صدق الإمام وآمنا به. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. You find that mainstream historians, أحبائي, portray the events leading up to Karbala and the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada in a very orchestrated manner. In that you will see across the passage of time, historians that have been employed and historians that are in the payroll of the emperors and of the dictators have a particular version of history that they wish to record in order for a particular narrative that fits their agenda to be pushed as the mainstream news. And you find this in particular was a mechanism that was employed when it came to recording the reality of the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, and in particular the betrayal and the treason that took place in the city of Kufa that ultimately led to the martyrdom of Imam Muslim bin Aqil alayhi salam. You find that the mainstream narrative is this: that in 60 AH, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan al-La'in dies, and there is a vacuum, and the people are not too pleased and too eager about the so-called Khilafat of Yazid. And hence, the Shias of Kufa wrote numerous letters to Imam al-Hussein. And in fact, you have historians, a group of historians that say 16,000 letters were written to Imam al-Hussein. You have another set of historians who say 18,000 letters were written. Another third set of historians that say 12,000 letters were written, and we have historical accounts that also suggest that 40,000 letters were written to Imam al-Hussein by the Shias of Kufa, inviting Imam al-Hussein to come to the city of Kufa because they are now ready to pay allegiance to him, accept him as their leader and as their imam. And from there, based on the letters that were written by the Shia of Kufa, Imam al-Hussein sent his cousin and his ambassador and his representative, Imam Muslim bin Aqil, to Kufa in order to verify and to survey whether the sentiments on the ground matches the sentiments within the letters that are received by Sayyid al-Shuhada. In the end, what happens? The Shia betrayed Muslim bin Aqil, which led to the martyrdom of Muslim bin Aqil, and as the political matters got blown out of proportion, it ultimately led to the killing and the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein. And the conclusion which is portrayed within the Shia, within the mainstream historical texts, is that it is the Shia who betrayed Imam Muslim bin Aqil and ultimately betrayed Imam al-Hussein. Tonight, we would like to invalidate and to show you the falsity of this type of historical claim. And inshallah, over the time that we have, we will analyze exactly those parts of the community that were responsible for the treason and the betrayal of Imam Muslim bin Aqil, and who was in essence responsible for the ensuing martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein. All of this with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So for Ahibai, I feel lectures of these nature, historical, are absolutely important. Because this history, number one, shows you how Tashayyu and Shiaism has reached you as a religion. On the other hand, as educated historians, Shi'i who have ma'rifah, you are able to understand how the books of history, and in fact the entire zaman, time in its entirety, stood up to wage war against Imam al-Hussein. And despite this, haqq still stands out. Number three, this is for us to have this level of confidence, in particular my brothers and my sisters, Shabab, who are in university, in high school, those of you who live in a mixed environment, that when you are asked questions such as these, when you are asked about Karbala, or when accusations are made that it was the Shia who betrayed Imam Muslim bin Aqil, you are confidently, non-violently, with ilm, education and proof, you are able to give answers and proudly defend your faith. Having said this, you find that in order to understand the reality and uncover the reality of the treason that occurred with Imam Muslim bin Aqil, it is absolutely important for us to understand and to analyze the ideological composition of the city of Kufa in 60 AH. You find that, contrary to popular belief, the Shia in 60 AH were actually not the majority of the population of Kufa. I repeat. In contrast to popular belief, the Shia population in Kufa in 60 AH was actually not the majority. They were a minority. And the proof for this comes from a number of historical texts. You have, for example, within the text known as Ansabul Ashraf, which is authored by one of the historians of the Amma, non-Shia, by the name of Baladuri. In his text Ansabul Ashraf, he mentions that in 60 AH, or prior to 60 AH, during the time of Muawiyah, so after the martyrdom of Amirul Mu'mineen, alayhi salam in the city of Kufa, and Muawiyah usurped the rights of Khilafah. Muawiyah forcefully exiled 25,000 prominent Shia from the city of Kufa to the wider parts of Khorasan. 25,000 of the most prominent Shia living inside of Kufa were exiled into Khorasan. And the idea for this was that a concentrated population of the Shia in a city as strategic as Kufa would prove to be a threat to the seat of Muawiyah. And hence, when the Shia were exiled from the city of Kufa, primarily in the direction of Khorasan, the idea was that if they are scattered, they become a disunited force and lesser of a threat as they are further and further away from the mainstream cities within the Islamic Empire. Wahid. Number two, you find that Muawiyah, and in particular Al-La'in, Muawiyah in particular, after the Sulhul Hasan. Sulhul Hasan, as you may all know, is popularly translated as the peace treaty between Muawiyah and Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. Well, in essence, this is a bit of an injustice to the event that took place between Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Muawiyah. Because the word Sulh, if you have a look within the writings of Sheikh al-Mufid, Rahmatullah alayhi, he describes the Sulh as being a hudna. Hudna means a ceasefire. And a ceasefire only takes place when you have two sides, warring factions, where both parties have a standing army that is ready to go to war. But for a greater good, there is a ceasefire that is agreed upon. And Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba has numerous reasons for orchestrating this ceasefire. It is in fact because of this ceasefire, Bain al-Qawsayn, it is because of this ceasefire that the true personality of Muawiyah, in that he was exposed to be the munafiq that he was through the barakah of the ceasefire of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. In any case, you find that the year after the ceasefire with Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, Ruhi lahul fida, Muawiyah al-La'in, and this historical fact is mentioned in the text Sharh Nahjul Balagha by Ibn Abdul Hadid bin Ibn Abdul Hadid al-Mu'tazili. Ibn Abdul Hadid al-Mu'tazili is a Mu'tazili, Sunni scholar who has authored a commentary on Nahjul Balagha. And it is a commentary worth reading, however, between brackets, Bain al-Qawsayn, for those of us who are researchers, it is also important for us to note that even though Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili has written a commentary on Nahjul Balagha, the khitab, the khutbahs and the letters of Amirul Mu'mineen, a person should be careful of the commentary of Ibn Abil Hadid, particularly in the sermons of Tawheed, Nabuwa, Imamat and Ma'ad. Because the commentator has then gone on to analyze the words of Amirul Mu'mineen, ideological interpretations, not with a Shi'i Aqidah, but with a Mu'tazili Aqidah. And hence it is important that a person takes this into consideration and not take it as gospel. In any case, Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili in Sharh Nahjul Balagha states that in the year after the ceasefire was drawn between Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Muawiyah al-La'in, al-La'in from my side, not from his side, for by Muawiyah al-La'in, Muawiyah made a declaration that anyone who is known to have narrated a fadila from the fada'il of Abu Turab is to be executed. Think of this in current day terms as a governmental policy that is actioning ethnic cleansing against a particular sect to wipe them out from the Islamic empire altogether. Anyone who is known to mention a fadila from the fada'il of Amirul Mu'mineen is to be executed. Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili says, once this declaration was made, but it's an announcement that comes from the head of state, governmental policy, khalas, ba'ad, the entire army, internal intelligence are out and about within the Islamic empire looking for somebody that they suspect is a Shia who has mentioned the fadila or the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen so they can execute him. He mentions, Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili states that Ziyad ibn Abih, the father of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, in order to action this governmental policy of Muawiyah, executed thousands upon thousands of Shia, who not only narrated the merits and the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but those who were suspect to be some sort of affiliation or sympathy for Amir al-Mu'mineen. In fact, he goes on to say that not only did Ziyad ibn Abi execute thousands of Shias, he says after him his son Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, the exact text within the source is that it says فَكَانَ Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad فَكَانَ يَتَتَبَّعَ الشِّيعَ فَيَقْتُلُهُمْ تَحْتَ كُلِّ حَجَرٍ وَمَدَرٍ. فَيَتَتَبَّعَ الشِّيعَ. You know what this means? فَيَتَتَبَّعَ, yani he used to follow them with all intensity, meaning that all government resources from your internal security forces and resources were employed to spy on, target and execute the Shia. The text goes on to say, even if a Shia was to be found under the rocks or hiding in the caves or in the mountains, they would go extract him and execute him. He goes on to say, not only were they executed in the outskirts of the city, they were executed within the public squares in the most humiliating manner, with cruel torture, to an extent which is not even understandable by the human mind. And this is a narrative by a Mu'tazili Sunni. He says Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad would take, in particular the Shia of Kufa, if they were suspected to be the Shia, they would be crucified in public, and there would be iron nails that would be drilled into or hammered into their eyes, to make this a lesson for everybody else. You dare speak about the merits of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and this is what is going to happen to you. And if we understand this historical reality, you find that by the time 61 AH came, or 60 AH came, in that it was the time of the Imamat of Imam al-Hussein, the Shias of Kufa were actually a minority because they had been a victim of mass genocide and forceful exile prior to the Imamat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Number one. For you find that, if we understand this, the first ideological composition of the people in the city of Kufa was that you had the Shia, and the Shia were a minority. Number two, you had the Amawis. The Amawis were these groups of families. There were these tribes, families and individuals who were staunch supporters of Uthman ibn Affan and Muawiyah. And in addition to being staunch supporters of Uthman and Muawiyah, these were people who heavily propagated Umayyi expansionism within the Islamic empire and abroad. This was their job. There were tribes and there were families like the aristocrats, and you can think about them in current day terms as these elite families that actually served as lobby groups with the head of the state or the empire, and their job was to propagate the expansion of the Umayyi rule across the Islamic empire and abroad. And you find that Bain al-Qawsayn, again between brackets, that a lot of these expansionist movements that happened beyond the Islamic borders of Hijaz upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah actually led to more damage for Islam than good. The reputation of Islam was ruined by these khulafa of Saqifa and Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas, who went and waged war with neighboring countries under the pretext of spreading Islam, when Islam was nothing more than an excuse to gain wealth and territory. This in itself is a bahath and a historical research on its own. In any case, you have these aristocrats, Amawis, that were planted inside of Najaf, hardcore lobby groups that push forward an Uthmani and an Amawi agenda forward. And within them, there were also spies who would keep an eye on the rest of the community within the city of Kufa, and would be in constant touch with the seat of the government, the headquarters of the government in Sham, writing to them and informing them of every incident, political, social, ideological, in terms of what is happening inside of Kufa, because Kufa in itself was a strategic city. And from an example of these spies who are from the lobby group of Bani Umayyah was Ash'ath ibn Qais, or Qais ibn Ash'ath, afwan. Qais ibn Ash'ath, you find that this was a family that had utmost loyalty to Bani Umayyah, and the bughd for Al Muhammad, the bughd, the level of hatred that has not been seen. Ash'ath ibn Qais had a hand in the martyrdom of Amirul Mu'mineen. His daughter Ju'ada, La'natullah alayha, was responsible for the martyrdom of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. Ash'ath ibn Qais's brother, or Ash'ath ibn Qais's son, Ju'ada's brother Muhammad al-La'in, was responsible for the martyrdom of Muslim bin Aqil in Kufa, and he himself led a massive contingency against Imam al-Hussein in Karbala. In addition to people like these, you had Shuraih al-Qadhi. Shuraih al-La'in was the head of judiciary, and this is just to show you how deep the tentacles of Bani Umayyah were when it came to controlling the city of Kufa. And on the other hand, it shows you the bravery of somebody like Imam Muslim bin Aqil, that he went into the depth of the city of Kufa and led a revolution from there. In any case, Shuraih al-Qadhi was the head of the judiciary, but was a staunch supporter and a propagator. See, there's a difference between supporter and propagator. Sometimes you have supporter in that you are the head of judiciary under a certain government, and as long as your employment is guaranteed, and your pension and your funds and your housing and your social status, you run the agenda. This is one thing. But then you have others who go a step above and beyond and push forward the propagation of this ideology. Shuraih was one of them. And Shuraih, by the way, played a critical role in the martyrdom of Hani ibn Urwa. For you have, coming back to our main topic, the composition of the people inside of Kufa. You have the Shia, who are a minority. And then in addition to this, you have those who were staunch supporters of Bani Umayyah. And their numbers were not small. In fact, if you refer back to the text known as Khutatul Kufa, you find that it is narrated over there that Muawiyah, during his days, after the martyrdom of Amirul Mu'mineen and during the days of the ceasefire with Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, Muawiyah migrated 25,000 Shami families to come and live inside of Kufa, such that they could rebalance the ideological composition of the city of Kufa to front and to counter the Shias of Amirul Mu'mineen. 25,000 Shamis were brought to settle inside of Kufa so that they could influence and spread their culture and their faith and their belief. Subhanallah. you find that numbers don't lie and numbers don't come by coincidence. Khutat al-Kufa, the text Khutat al-Kufa says 25,000 Shamis were remigrated, resettled from Sham to come into Kufa. And if you go back to Ansabul Ashraf of Baladhuri, and these two authors of these two texts are not related in any way, not by name, not by family, and not by time. They say 25,000 Shias were forcefully removed from Kufa. So when you bring these two texts together, you see how Bani Umayyah was functioning. Forcefully exiled 25,000 Shia outside of Kufa, and in to replace them, bring them another 25,000 Shamis who are haters of Ali Muhammad. In addition to this, the third group of people within the community of Kufa were the Khawarij. The Khawarij came about as a result of their animosity towards Amirul Mu'mineen during the Battle of Siffin. And you find that the Khawarij were people who were pretty much like present-day mercenaries, who had very little loyalty to anybody. They had absolute hatred for Amirul Mu'mineen, which made them a perfect ally for Bani Umayyah. Because between Bani Umayyah and the Khawarij, there was a common enemy. That was Amirul Mu'mineen. Your enemy's friend is your friend. Politics, Habibi, this is not new that we see now. This corrupt politics that you see in this day and age, these are teachings that are taken from the politics of Bani Umayyah and the people of Saqifa. In any case, you have the Khawarij. The fourth set of people within the composition of the city of Kufa were those Muslims who subscribed to the school of Saqifa. These are people who took the first four khulafa to be the khulafa, but they did not view Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Husayn's imamat, as a God-given right by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their understanding of imamat was not that imamat entails unconditional obedience towards the imam of your time, even at the expense of death. This understanding of imamat is exclusive to the Shia Ithna Ashari, because within our belief, imamat is a God-given position. Within our belief, loyalty towards an imam is unconditional and uncompromised upon. However, within the school of Saqifa, this thought process did not exist. These were merely seen as political leaders, and today your allegiance is with them so long as the conditions and the environment supports you. They're like the wind, and tomorrow if conditions are against you, they abandon the imam altogether. And this was seen during the imamat of Amirul Mu'mineen, how they treated and how they viewed the authority of Amirul Mu'mineen. This was the fourth part of the community inside of Kufa. The fifth composition of the community of Kufa was made up of the Jews and the Christians, the followers of Nabi Isa and the followers of Nabi Musa. And to a great extent, these two communities lived in the city of Kufa primarily for their financial benefits. Non-Muslims living within the city of Kufa, a Muslim city, they paid their jizya and they went about conducting their daily trade and daily business. But as you all know, in order to be successful in trade, you need to have political affiliation. And from here you find that there were those followers there were those groups from amongst the followers of Nabi Musa who had ties with Bani Umayyah. And you have those followers of Nabi Isa who had ties with Bani Umayyah. And on the other hand, you have communities from within the followers of Nabi Musa and Nabi Isa who were neutral. They had empathy and sympathy for Ahlul Bayt. Some of them even converted, and there were those who were neutral. And their stance in itself is a bahath perhaps for another night. In any case, for today we are able to understand, or for the purpose of today's lecture, you are able to understand that the composition of the city of Kufa was made up of these 5 ideological parties, of which the Shia were the minority. Tayyib. If we understand this, we move on to the next step. Is that when Imam Muslim bin Aqil came to Kufa, what happened to the Shia? Is it the Shia who betrayed him, Lola? Because until now, if you understand that the Shia are a minority, and there were 18,000 letters that were written from Kufa to Imam al-Hussein saying, come, we accept you as our leader, you also understand that it was not the Shia exclusively who wrote to Imam al-Hussein. There were non-Shias that were living inside of Kufa that actually invited Imam al-Hussein because they saw that there is a maslihah for them in the leadership of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Tayyib, so what happened to these Shia? Even from the 18,000, there is a great number, even if it is a minority, there is a number of them who wrote to Muslim bin Aqil. What happened to them? You find that, number one, as soon as Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad was reposted from the governorship of Basra to Kufa, what happened is that Nu'man ibn Bashir was the governor of Kufa and was very weak in terms of taking a staunch decision against Imam Muslim bin Aqil. In fact, I would not even say he's weak. I would say that Muslim bin Aqil had by far outsmarted Nu'man ibn Bashir in order to create the environment of revolution inside of Kufa. In any case, Nu'man ibn Bashir was dismissed from his post. Yazid appoints Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Consolidate between the province of Basra and between the city of Basra and the city of Kufa. One governor. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad comes to Kufa, is appointed as the leader, as the governor. The first thing Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad did is that he carried out mass executions of the Shia in public. Which one of you is a supporter of Muslim bin Aqil? Their entire names and their entire list, because the city of Kufa, and at that time majority of the cities within the Islamic empire worked on a system of a registered census. I don't know if you guys have census that happens here or how often it happens, but even till today inside of Iraq, the census is something that is taken very, very seriously in every locality that you live. If you rent a house in a certain locality, you need to go to the local, they call him the Mukhtar. You go to the local Mukhtar, you register your name, your date of birth, who is living in your household, how many you are, where you are born, where fulan, all details. And whoever lives within that locality must have all his information. You have a new child that was born to your house, you go to the house of the Mukhtar and you get it registered. So there is absolute control over the census in that there is full flow information for the governmental authorities. And this system was in use during the time of Bani Umayyah, in that there was a proper census within all the cities. So the first thing Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad said is, bring out all these government officials who have information in regards to the population by way of census, and identify for me who are the Shia. As soon as this information was given to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, the first thing that he did is conduct mass executions of the supporters of Imam Muslim bin Aqil from the Shia. One of the most prominent people to be publicly executed inside of Kufa for being a supporter of Imam al-Hussein was Mitham al-Tammar. And we shall recite his Masaib towards the end of the Majlis. And on the day that Mitham al-Tammar was executed, there are 9 other prominent Shias that were publicly hanged, crucified with him. So this is the first thing Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad did. As soon as he came in, began mass executions of the Shiite supporters of Imam Muslim bin Aqil. Number one. Number two, Sheikh al-Mamkani rahmatullah alayhi in his text Tankih al-Rijal states that when Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came to Kufa, there are 4,500 prominent Shia that were arrested by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and imprisoned within their jails. You get how many? 4,500 prominent Shia. Do you know from these 4,500 who are these people? Some of them were the likes of Mukhtar. Some of them were the likes of Sulaiman ibn Sard. Sulaiman ibn Sard was one of the first people to write to Imam al-Hussein and say to him, come to Kufa, him and Habib ibn Madahir and Abbas. Sulaiman was imprisoned because of his role in writing the letter and gathering support for the coming of Imam Muslim bin Aqil. Mukhtar was imprisoned. Asbagh ibn Nabata was a judge and served in the judiciary of Amirul Mu'mineen, which means that in addition to being a warrior in the battlefield, he was well versed with law and could conduct the judicial affairs of a country or a nation. Asbagh ibn Nabata is that companion whom Amirul Mu'mineen taught him the rules of Arabic grammar that are used till today. You find in the most basic text of Arabic language by the name of Ujurumiyya, which is taught within the Hawza Ilmiya and any other perhaps institution that teaches Arabic language. Kitab al-Ujurumiyya is written by the author is a mukhalif from the Amma. Yet in his introduction he says that the rules of Arabic grammar are taught to us or have been taken by Asbagh ibn Nabata, who was taught the rules of grammar by Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. So you have people like Asbagh ibn Nabata, grammarian, head of judiciary, and the fearless warrior within the battlefield. By Allah, how many times do you find in history a person who can excel in all three of these divisions that are unrelated? You don't find in history people like these gems. These were the type of people that were imprisoned and executed by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Between brackets, Bain al-Qawsayn, a person cannot even attain perfection in all three fields like these until and unless you are a student of a ma'soom like Amirul Mu'mineen. History has never produced men like Asbagh ibn Nabata until and unless they had mentors such as Amir. But some people say Amir, he trained Asbagh ibn Nabata. Habibi Jibreel became Jibreel because of Amirul Mu'mineen. Bain al-Qawsayn, I didn't want to say this, but Shay Bishay Yudhkar, something which is along the lines over here. In regards to Amirul Mu'mineen and Amirul Mu'mineen being a teacher as Amirul Mu'mineen. Hadith al-Sharif narrates that, as you know, Ahlul Bayt were Noor. This is away from our lecture, but ma'rifah, khair. Ahlul Bayt were Noor even before the universe was created. Noor that was performing tawaf around the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The malaika learned tasbih from the Noor of Ali Muhammad. You know Jibreel, how did Jibreel become Jibreel? From all the malaika that are there, that Allah Azza wa Jalla has created. The most greatest of creations are the malaika in terms of numbers. For everything that is created, there is an angel that is designated. From all these millions of malaika, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala select Jibreel to be the one who is in charge of transmitting the wahi to all the anbiya, including Rasulullah? Why? Why not Mikael? Why not Israfil? You know why? Jibrail's teacher was Amirul Mu'mineen. Why? Hadith al-Sharif mentions, Jibrail himself says, and this is a conversation that is happening in the Alam al-Malakut between the angels. Jibrail takes fakhr and pride of his relationship with Amirul Mu'mineen. Jibrail says, when I was created, because the malaika are Noor, he says, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me, Allah Azza wa Jal, with his grand Noor, the Noor of Allah. When Jibreel was created, he was placed in front of the Arsh of Allah. Jibreel says, when I was created and I stood in front of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the universe, Allah Azza wa Jal, asked me, Man ana wa man ant? Who am I and who are you? Jibreel says, when my Lord asked me, who am I was overcome with fear and I began to tremble in front of the grandeur of my Lord. Jibreel says, I didn't know what to answer. And then I heard a voice behind me say, Qul anta rabbul jaleel wa ana abduka dhaleel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved my answer to the extent that because of this answer He made me in charge of the wahi for all the anbiya. Jibreel says, I looked back to see who gave me this answer. I saw Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Students of Amirul Mu'mineen from the Malaika and from Ins and from Jinn and from Malaika. There is a lot. If we enter just into who are the students and the products of Amirul Mu'mineen. Any case, Habib ibn Madahir, inshallah we have his majlis in a few days. Habib ibn Madahir from the students of Amirul Mu'mineen. In any case, it was the likes of Asbagh ibn Nabata who were being imprisoned by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. And like this, Sheikh al-Mamkani in his text Tanqih al-Rijal states that 4,500 prominent Shia. You can imagine the quality of these people when Asbagh ibn Nabata was one of them, was imprisoned. And then you have one from the contemporary scholars, Alama al-Marhum Muhammad Baqir al-Qarashi, rahmatullah alayh, who's a Najafi scholar in Najaf. He's got a great collection of books on the history of Ahlul Bayt. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of these books are translated in English as well and perhaps available online. Shabab, you have a chance, learn about Ahlul Bayt from scholars like these. He goes on to say that when Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came to Kufa, 12,000 Shia were arrested. For between these numbers of 12,000 and 4,500 and the other numbers that were being executed by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad in the public, I ask you, who remained from the Shia to support Imam Muslim bin Aqil? Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came into Kufa and cut the legs of the Shias that was supporting Muslim bin Aqil. And the reality of the matter is that it is those groups of people that subscribed to the madrasa of Saqifa that did not believe that Imamat is a divinely given post in which obedience to the Imam, even at the cost of death, is wajib, are the ones who abandoned Muslim bin Aqil. Because their Aqidah did not stipulate that you have to support an Imam even if the political situation goes against you. Hence, they called the Imam when the situation was in their favor. And the minute the favor turned against them, they abandoned Muslim bin Aqil. And this is the sad reality of the treason that took place and an aspect of history that has been purposely covered across the passage of time and the blame put onto the Shia for a number of reasons. If we enter just into the reasons why the Shia have been blamed for this, Allah, it set the trend for Shia sociological and political behavior for the next 255 years leading up to the ghaibah of the Imam. A person might say, Tayyib, all these people we understand, they got killed, they got executed. But what happened to the likes of Habib ibn Madahir? Habib ibn Madahir and Muslim ibn Awsaja and Abu Thumama, these were people who were residents of Kufa, who wrote letters to Muslim bin Aqil. And then they ended up where? In Karbala. Does that mean that Habib ibn Madahir and Muslim ibn Awsaja and Abu Thumama abandoned Imam Muslim bin Aqil? La, if they had abandoned Imam Muslim bin Aqil, Imam al-Hussein would not have welcomed them in Karbala. What actually happened, and this is where a historical blackout happens, is that when Imam Muslim bin Aqil saw that the people around him are abandoning him, he commanded Habib ibn Madahir, Muslim ibn Awsaja, and Abu Thumama to leave the city of Kufa immediately and make ways towards Karbala, because supporting Imam al-Hussein was a greater cause than supporting Muslim bin Aqil. And this shows you how much Muslim bin Aqil had loyalty in his heart towards Imam al-Hussein. This we will discuss in further detail on the night of Habib ibn Madahir, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. From the people that were executed, Masa'ib. From the people that were executed in Kufa, Mitham al-Tammar. The historians mention that Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad sent out the internal security forces to arrest Mitham al-Tammar and bring him into Darul Imara. Mitham, as you know, was a date seller. Inshallah, all of us get the opportunity when we visit Najaf al-Ashraf and Kufa to visit the shrine and the dharih of this great shaheed, Mitham al-Tammar, rahmatullah alayh. Mitham was arrested. He was brought into the court. They said to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, this is Mitham al-Tammar, who has been calling for the support of Muslim bin Aqil and Hussein ibn Ali. And he is known to be from one of the most vocal supporters and Shias of Ali ibn Abi Talib. They would not even say Ali ibn Abi Talib, they would say Abu Turab. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad looked at Mitham al-Tammar and he said, Wayhakum, هذا الأعجمي قد آثره علي ibn Abi Talib. Is it this non-Arab? Because Mitham al-Tammar had a non-Arab background and these people were racist to the bone. They had this superiority complex inside of them. Umayyad supremacy at its peak. He said, this non-Arab, this is the one who was favored and was from the most prominent companions of Abu Turab? They said, yes. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad says to Mitham al-Tammar, I command you to disassociate yourself publicly from Ali ibn Abi Talib and to curse him in public in Masjid al-Kufa. Mitham al-Tammar looked at him and he smiled and he said, my Mawla had told me that this day would come, and I shall never curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad looked at him, he said, your Mawla told you this day was coming? Mitham said, yes. He said, what did your Mawla tell you? Mitham says to him, my master told me that I will be urged to disassociate from him, and if I do not do so, my limbs will be severed and I will be crucified on a palm tree and my tongue will be pulled out, and all these atrocities will be committed by a person who is Ibn Zina, the son, an illegitimate child, and that is you, Ibn Ziyad. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad stood up from his throne raging with anger. And he said to Mitham al-Tammar, today I will prove that your master is a liar, in that I will do everything to you, but I will not pull out your tongue. The historians mention they took Mitham al-Tammar into the public square outside Darul Imara by Masjid al-Kufa. They called the entire city of Kufa to come and witness. This is the result of anyone who dares to support Hussein ibn Ali or recite the merits of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. The narrations mention they lay Mitham al-Tammar on the ground. They severed his right hand and they severed his left hand. And as he lay there covered in blood, they cut off both his legs. You can imagine this? People, these were animals. Qasam, even the animals don't behave like this. Mitham at-Tammar, covered in blood. The narrations mention they lifted the torso of Mitham at-Tammar and they crucified him towards a palm tree. And they left him bleeding from all his limbs. A torso only means the head to the waist was remaining of Mitham at-Tammar. And as he was crucified on the palm tree, these are the Shias of Amirul Mu'mineen. The narrations mention Mitham at-Tammar called out, "O people of Kufa, come around and listen to what I have to say about Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib." The people of Kufa were surprised. How is it that this nothing remaining from a man except his torso? What would he have to say now? So they gathered around the palm tree in which Mitham at-Tammar was crucified. Mitham began to recite the Fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The narrations mention the people began to weep and cry as they heard the khutbah of Mitham in this way, until one of the spies went to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. He said to him, "Mitham is reciting the Fada'il of Ali. We are scared that if he continues in this manner, the people may become motivated and encouraged to rise up against you." So Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad said, "Go and pull out his tongue. Allah, Allah, ya Shia." They came towards Mitham at-Tammar. He was bleeding from his torso and every part of his body. They held the chin and the jaw of Mitham. With a tool that looked like pliers, they pulled out the tongue of Mitham. The narrations mention that blood began to sprout out from the mouth of Mitham, covering his blood. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Mitham at-Tammar became shaheed, crucified on the plains, on the palm trees of Kufa. Allah, Allah, ya Shiat ala Muhammad. Mitham became shaheed in the night. Nobody wanted to bury Mitham at-Tammar. I want to take you to Karbala from here. Nobody wanted to bury Mitham at-Tammar because they were scared of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. So as the night fell, 7 friends of Mitham at-Tammar, who were also date sellers, they took down the body of what was remaining from the body of Mitham at-Tammar, and in the darkness of the night they buried it to where it was on a night like this. I say, Allah, Allah, ya Mitham at-Tammar, you were buried in the darkness of the night by 7 of your companions. Ya Shi'at ala Muhammad, come to Karbala. Come to Karbala. The body of Sayyid al-Shuhada, the body that was trampled and broken by the horses, a body that had no head, was left on the plains of Karbala, covered in blood and sand for 3 days. Nobody to give a ghusl, nobody to give a kafan. Allah, the Rawi in the Maktal mentions that on one of the nights, because for 3 nights the body of Imam al-Hussein lay without a ghusl and a kafan. Rawi mentions on one of the nights, I was around the body of Imam al-Hussein. He says, I heard a thunderous cry from the heavens. He says, I got frightened and I fell down. When I looked up, I saw heavenly people descending down from the heavens, coming into Karbala from all the people. He says, I saw one man who was covered in nur. He came towards the body of Imam al-Hussein. He threw himself on the body and he said, Wa akha wa Husayna, assalamu alayka ya gharib al-ghuraba. He says, Ana akhuka al-Hasan. The Rawi mentions that Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba descended from the heavens. He came and he said, Assalamu alayka ya gharib al-ghuraba. Allah, the Rawi mentions, as Imam al-Mujtaba was sitting in the body of Imam al-Hussein, he says, I saw a divine woman come down from the heavens. Allah, ya Shia. He says the woman was dressed in black in her entirety. She came running towards the body of Imam al-Hussein with her hands on her head. The Rawi mentions, the Maktal says, فَرَمَتْ نَفْسَهَا عَلَى جِثَتِهِ. She threw herself on the body of Imam al-Hussein. Allah, who is this woman? Look at what the Rawi says. She threw herself on the body of Imam al-Hussein. She began to kiss the chest of Imam al-Hussein. And then she cried out, Wa abata ya Rasul Allah, oh my father, ya Rasul Allah. And then she looked at the body, she said, Wa atshana, oh the one who was killed thirsty. Ya Shia, what did she say? She then looked at the body the Rawi mentions. She says, Ana ummuka Zahra kallimni. She says, I am your mother Fatima. Hussein, speak to me. The Rawi mentions as soon as Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra said this, a voice came out from the body of Imam al-Hussein. The voice said, Ya Ummah. Do you know the Rawi says, فَخَرَجَتِ الصَّوْتُ مِنْ نَحْرِهِ, yani the voice came out from the part of the neck in which they severed the head of Imam al-Hussein. A voice came out saying, oh my mother, قَتَلُونِي وَذَهَبُونِ مِنَ الْكَفَى. They slaughtered me from the back of my neck. Batam Hussein.
Ya Hussein, you want to do something? Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है। सादात पे रोने के अय्याम हैं आए, रो रो के मुहर्रम का हाय चांद ये बतला है, रो रो के मुहर्रम رو رو
کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
بہنیں تھی بیردا تو سر نے ذاتا بھائی اجڑی تھی نینوا میں زہرا کی کمائی. زہرا کو لحد میں بھی ہے چین نہ آئے. رو رو کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے. رو رو کے محرم
کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
رو رو کے محرم کا
ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
کبھی دیکھتی اصغر کو کبھی دیکھتی راہیں راہوں پہ جمی رہ گئی ہے پیاسی نگاہیں. آیا ہے علم ناہی علمدار نہ آئے. رو رو کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے. رو رو
کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
نادے علی ہے پڑھ کے بنایا تیرا صحرا دل ہی میرے نہ جائے ارمان یہ میرا. بن بھیا کے اب نانا مجھے چین نہ آئے. رو رو کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے. رو رو
کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
آواز دو مادر کو کہاں سوئے ہوئے ہو تنہائی میں گھبرا کے روئے تو نہیں ہو. مارو رو علی اصغر تیرا جھولا جھولائیں. رو رو کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے. رو
کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
بی بی تجھ نہ ملنا تیرے بابا کا سینہ قیدوں میں رلائے گا تجھے شمر کمینہ. دن تیرے یتیمی کے نزدیک ہیں آئیں. رو رو کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے. رو رو
کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
سادات پہ رونے کے ایام ہیں آئے. رو رو کے محرم کا
ہے چاند یہ بتلائے. رو رو کے محرم کا ہے چاند یہ بتلائے.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی. لوگوں یہ جنازہ ہے اسلام کے بانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کربل کی کہانی کا. بی بی نے کہا بابا کربل میں چلے آنا. بی بی نے کہا بابا کربل میں چلے آنا. منظر میں دکھاؤں گی اکبر کی جوانی کا. لوگوں یہ جنازہ ہے اسلام کے بانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کٹ جائے گے بازو بھی عباس باوفا کے. کٹ جائے گے بازو بھی عباس باوفا کے. تیروں سے ہوگا چلنی مشکی زب و پانی کا. لوگوں یہ جنازہ ہے اسلام کے بانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز
ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا.
دیکھے گا کربلا میں قاسم کے سر کا صحرا. دیکھے گا کربلا میں قاسم کے سر کا صحرا. خوشیاں سمیٹ لے گا عالم وہ ویرانی کا. لوگوں یہ جنازہ ہے اسلام کے بانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا.
آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا.
روتے تھے فرشتے بھی جب زو سمالزا. روتے تھے فرشتے بھی جب زو سمالزا. تابوت اٹھ رہا ہے عمران کے جانی کا. لوگوں یہ جنازہ ہے اسلام کے بانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے
کربل کی کہانی کا.
تاشر میرے مولا مشتاق رہوں تیرا. تاشر میرے مولا مشتاق رہوں تیرا. مل جا اے شرف مجھ کو بس تیری غلامی کا. لوگوں یہ جنازہ ہے اسلام کے بانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. آغاز ہو رہا ہے کربل کی کہانی کا. یا حسین.
اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
السلام علیکم یا ابا عبداللہ. السلام علیکم ابن رسول اللہ. السلام علیکم ابن امیر المؤمنین. السلام علیکم ابن فاطمہ زہرا سیدۃ النساء العالمین. السلام علیکم یا ابا الفضل عباس ابن امیر المؤمنین. السلام علیکم یا غریب الغرباء. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علیکم یا صاحب العصر والزمان. الامان 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 من فتنۃ الزمان. السلام علیکم یا شیخ القرآن. السلام علیکم یا خلیفۃ الرحمن. السلام علیکم یا امام الانس والجان. अजरल्लाहु ताला फरजक व सहरल्लाह मखरजक व ज़हूरक व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू.
Just a reminder that there will be a Q&A once again at 7 p.m. tomorrow with Sheikh Abbas Panju here.